All right, hey everyone, this is Justin Goldsboro. We're here with Steve Crescenzo. Hopefully you got to see him at the BCS conference today. A couple of great presentations. Steve, you've talked a lot about creativity in all your communications work you do today. I know a lot of people are trying to figure out how to tie social media to the bottom line ROI. But what are other ways you can validate creativity to executives or to leadership?
That's a great question, Justin. I think that one of the points I made in my first session, in my keynote session, was if you're doing creativity for creativity's sake, you can't justify it. You know, a lot of us are creative people. We work in non-creative environments, corporations, organizations, healthcare facilities, where everything's just kind of done the same way all the time. And we get tired, and we want to bust out into something creative, which is great. You should satisfy that urge. But you also need to make sure that everything that you do is tied to one of the business objectives. So it's not a matter of, you're not being creative because you're bored. You're not being creative because you feel like doing something kooky and crazy. You're being creative because it's going to help you achieve a business objective. One of the examples I showed was the UPS example, where they did a video contest, basically like a film festival, where they asked employees to submit videos that are all related to one of their business initiatives. They got some really funny videos in. They did a contest on the internet with it, with like a March Madness brackets, and people voted on the videos. You know, it took over the place for a month and a half. If those videos were, if they went out and said, we want you to submit videos on your hobby, or submit videos showing your pets, or your latest vacation, your family vacation, you can't justify that. That's a waste of time. But they're creating videos based on the business, based on the objective. Everything that you do from a creative standpoint, there's two elements you have to have, I think, in order for communication to work these days. Number one, it's got to be tied to business, because people want the ROI. Nobody has time for any superfluous stuff. Number two, it's got to be creative. If you combine those two things and do creative, business-focused communication, you're worth your weight in gold.
Very good. No, I think that's right on. You showed us a lot of guys today in about 50 years old or older in white suits, right? A lot of the executives that we took to look at, a lot of the executive newsletters. How does executive communications have to change today in the social media world?
Well, unfortunately, it has to change dramatically and drastically, and a lot of executives don't realize that. And unfortunately, communicators are not willing to stand up and say the emperor has no clothes. The executive comes out and he comes out with his jargon and his buzzwords and his very stiff, formal way of communicating, because that's all he knows. And he's been told for years that's how he should do it. And that doesn't work in the social media space. Social media is about more transparency, more authenticity. It's about more conversation. It's about real people telling real stories. If you get out there and do your whitewashed press release style communication on a Facebook page or on a blog, you're not going to get a response. In fact, you're going to look kind of silly. So when executives make the leap from traditional communications, where they control everything, they check the quote 5 times, they have the lawyers check the quote, when they get out there and start communicating in the social media space, where to them again, they're just thrown into the mix with everybody else, they got to be okay with that, and they got to be okay with changing their communication style. And to me, that's never going to happen unless the communications folks coach them. And that's our biggest role. Our biggest role, because what's happening with communications is we're losing part of our role. We were always the gatekeeper of the information. We were the publishers. We take what the leaders say, publish it, and push it out. Well, we were that link. Well, as these people start communicating directly to audiences, we're losing a big part of our role. So if we want to have a job, we better fill that role with something else. And one of the big ones is being a talent scout, figuring out which executives should be blogging, and then being a coach and helping them do it right. Blogging, tweeting, whatever the social media is.
Steve, you're very good at this because you kind of just went right into my third question about the publisher role. So I'm going to go back to another question I had. So maybe you read my BlackBerry earlier.
No, I didn't know. I just talked too much.
Yeah, no, those are great answers. Flip cams, right? Let's talk about some of the tools maybe that people can use to help them be creative. We're using a flip cam now. You gave several examples where people use flip cams. Not that that's the only type of video content,
right.
But talk about flip cams. Talk about other creative tools.
Sure, I think that what's driving the reason the web is multimedia now, which it wasn't for years. For years that people kept saying it was, but it really wasn't. Now it is. And what's driving that is the tools have gotten so easy to use. The flip camera, you bring it up. I showed an example of somebody doing a safety story and, doing a video of somebody's mangled arm for 10 seconds. They used a flip camera for that. I know the Mayo Clinic. They do some cool things with flip cameras. And, I'm not saying that there's not a role for traditional video, more expensive video, more glossy, slick video. There certainly is going to be a place for that. But there are so many cool guerrilla interview type things you can do with a flip. Bring it to a trade show. My wife Cindy, for one of our clients, she brought her flip camera up, went to a trade show to a client, and captured short 2-minute interviews with all these customers who were stopping by the booth. What are you looking for? I mean, it was great. It was guerrilla style. It wasn't real slick or polished, but it was a great way to capture what those customers were thinking. So yeah, I think the video, I think the audio recorders, for podcasts, those are so easy to use. The software is so easy to use on these things. I mean, unlike a lot of social media people or communicators, I'm not a gadget guy.
Right.
If I have to switch from the video portion of my TV to the DVD, I have to call my wife, and she has to come in and help me do
You and me both, yeah.
I'm not a gadget guy. I can't stand gadgets. I can barely get my computer turned on in the morning.
Right.
I can do a flip camera video. I can edit that video. I can do a podcast. It's gotten so easy to do, which is giving us more outlets for our creativity.
And people's expectations, right? I mean, they don't expect that produced video.
This is the YouTube generation. This is the YouTube generation with a guerrilla-style video. A couple things you got to worry about, I think, is sound. You got to have good sound. And if you can avoid the shakiness, put it on a tripod or something, I think that's great. Other than that, have at it. What people are going to pay attention to in those videos is the content.
Right.
You could have a really slick, polished video with an executive going, well, I think as we leverage our core competencies, we're going to shift our paradigms, we're going to establish a global footprint, and it could be a beautiful video, and nobody's going to pay attention. You could have a really shaky video with a guy sitting there like this going, listen, our customers hate us, and here's why they hate us. We need to get better at this, this, and this. And if you speak in plain English and talking people's language, that video will have 1,000 times more viewers than this slick one with the bad content. Content is king.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a message hopefully executives are hearing, and hopefully they'll start to change. So, thanks everyone. You can follow some of the conversation from today's conference at the hashtag KCBCS, and thanks Steve for being here.
All right, thanks Justin. Talk to you.